Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're digging into how a protest outside the US Consulate in Karachi, Pakistan, completely spiraled out of control, turning into a violent mob attack and a truly deadly international incident. And here's the tragic outcome. At least 12 people were killed. The whole thing turned lethal when US Marine Guards, stationed inside the American consulate, opened fire on a mob that had already broken through the compound's outer defenses. So, you have to ask, how did a protest escalate so dramatically? I mean, to really get what happened in Karachi, we have to look at the one single event that basically lit the fuse for protests all over the globe. Okay, let's dive in. The catalyst, the spark, was the assassination of Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei. And his death in a joint US-Israeli operation immediately sent these massive shockwaves way beyond Iran's borders. You know, this wasn't just some geopolitical headline. For millions of Shia Muslims all around the world, this felt like a deeply personal attack on a revered spiritual and political figure. The response was, as you can imagine, swift and incredibly emotional. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Why did this specific event trigger such a huge and violent response in Pakistan, of all places? Well, the answer really comes down to the country's unique demographic makeup. See, Pakistan is home to the world's second largest Shia population, right after Iran itself. We're talking about an estimated 10 to 15% of the whole country. That translates to roughly 35 to 40 million people, many of whom hold a deep reverence for Iran's supreme leader. And right there, you see the connection. Karachi, the city where the attack happened, isn't just Pakistan's financial capital. It's also one of the largest centers for the country's Shia community. This basically made it an immediate flashpoint for pro-Khamenei and anti-US sentiment. It's a place where local identity and complex international politics were just bound to collide. So, with all this anger boiling over, protesters set their sights on a really potent symbol of American presence. Let's break down exactly how this situation escalated, step by step, into a full-blown assault on a diplomatic compound. The escalation here was just shockingly fast. This wasn't just some protest march. It was a systematic breach of multiple layers of security. The crowd completely overwhelmed the local police, pushed right through tear gas, and then literally tore through the outer walls of the consulate itself. With fires breaking out and the mob trying to storm the main building, the situation inside went from tense to critical in just a matter of minutes.
So here is the absolutely crucial point. Under international law, a consulate or an embassy is considered the sovereign territory of the country it represents. So by breaching the consulate's walls, the protesters were, for all intents and purposes, attempting to invade U.S. territory. And an act like that triggers a very specific and very serious security protocol. And that protocol is crystal clear. These diplomatic compounds are treated as fortified zones. The U.S. Marine Guards stationed there are authorized as a final line of defense to use lethal force. Their job is to protect the facility, the staff, and all the sensitive information inside when every other security measure has failed. Now, the violence in Karachi wasn't some isolated incident. It was really just the most extreme example of a much wider regional and international reaction to the assassination. And it put the entire region on high alert. You saw similar scenes playing out all across the Middle East and South Asia. In Baghdad, protesters gathered outside the U.S. Embassy. In other Pakistani cities like Lahore and Islamabad, protests also erupted. It just goes to show how a single geopolitical event can ignite widespread, almost instantaneous unrest across a whole bunch of countries. This whole thing also throws a big spotlight on the very complex and often contradictory nature of the US-Pakistan relationship. I mean, you have this strange situation where Pakistan's government officially condemned the assassination and even said Iran had a right to retaliate, but at the same time, high-level American leadership was publicly praising Pakistan's military leaders and supporting their military actions in the region. So why does all this matter on a global scale? Well, it's because the safety of diplomatic missions is one of the oldest and most fundamental rules of international relations. It's the core principle that allows countries to talk to each other, even when they're on the brink of conflict. When that line is crossed with fire and force, like it was in Karachi, it doesn't just endanger one building, it puts a strain on the entire system that's designed to prevent wider wars. Ultimately, what this incident in Karachi really shows us is that the consequences of one action in one country can spread across borders in unpredictable and often violent ways. And it leaves us with a critical question for our time. In a world this interconnected, is any political event ever truly local?